Welcome to the Nancy Perspective, where every story is a reminder that life's hardest battles often belong to the kindest hearts. We are back at part 2, and I say this a lot, but I think you and I could have about 10 parts of many different discussions.
I think we could.
I think we could. I'm back with a human, Tina Olivero. See, did I get the olive tree right again?
You did.
Yeah. A human that has gone through moments that make me speechless, which if you know me, you know I don't get speechless. And yet sit here, humbling, beautiful, empowered, and enlightened in a way that I just feel a lot of gratitude for sitting with you.
Thank you so much.
So again, it's not about preaching your power, but it is incredible how moments in time can make you sit on the floor or make you rise.
Mm-hmm.
And you talk about how you were raised, but what would you say is one thing that has made you really never give up? Or is it one thing?
I mean, I do believe that growing up in different countries all over the world, in places like South Africa in the midst of apartheid and oppression, and understanding the injustices of the world, and always being an advocate for the underdog. Yes, kind of my predisposition. I think a lot of that builds your vantage point.
Absolutely.
So my vantage point is not micro, it's macro.
Yeah. Okay.
And so I'm looking at the world from a larger perspective. That's the window in which I look out from. And like I say many times, the world is my home. Yeah. So if you're looking at the world, globally, which many of us are right now in this period of time, the choices I made were often from that vantage point in life. And I started, for example, an oil and gas magazine here in Newfoundland 6 years before we had a drop of oil here.
Wow.
And so that was a visionary thing that took a vantage point from a macro level, like what was possible for Newfoundland. The fishery moratorium had just happened. We were decimated as a people without that fishery, and there was nothing on the horizon. So what could we create? Yeah. And oil and gas was our saving grace for the next 3 decades. So luckily, being able to kind of see where we were going, put together this publication, which became the #1 magazine in Atlantic Canada, across Canada, and globally.
Wow.
About the opportunities in the energy sector. So that was an interesting career because it kind of took me all over the world. But once again, and traveling, in that space. But when Ben died from fentanyl, I could never see or predict what was going to happen other than, and like most people, we had a genetic predisposition for mental health issues in our family. My oldest brother, Rob, he was at 16 years old. He just came off the Sedco 706 rig. And my parents had moved to New York for my father to work at the UN, and I was home. And he smoked weed. Yeah. And when he did, he stopped sleeping that night, and the next night, and the next night. And it unlocked bipolar and schizophrenia in him. At the time, we had no idea what that was. That was way back, like 40 years ago. And as young kids, I was with Rob when he got home, and I was thinking, he's just partying. But he started to lose touch with reality, really scared me. And I called my parents, and I said, something's really wrong with Rob. And they said, get on a plane, bring him down. Thankfully, New York was light years ahead of us when it came to mental health addictions at that point. And he was admitted to hospital right away. And the weed unlocked bipolar. This happened to my brother Rob, he lived a tortured life with that underlying mental illness and never did recover to the same person.
Wow.
So I was very familiar with how underlying mental health issues impact someone who is trying to self-medicate with drugs. So from what I can see, there's three groups of people. There's people who have an addiction to a substance.
Yeah.
There's a person who has a mental illness, and there's a person who has both. And each requires a different protocol of care. And one of the things that our doctors are not addressing is those differentiating factors right now.
Yeah.
It ran in our family, genetic predisposition to mental health and addictions, is somewhere between 40 and 80%, depending on what your mental illness is. So the majority of what we're dealing with is genetics passed on.
Wow.
And so that's rampant in our family.
Yeah.
Just about one boy in every one of our families was hit with cannabis use disorder. And then, like for Ben, it went from weed to shatter to coke to crack to opioids. And ultimately, he thought he was doing coke or, taking a benzo. Yeah. And that benzo had fentanyl in it. And that's, we live in a crazy, crazy, crazy time in the world. Like legalizing weed right now, with weed being so much more genetically modified and powerful.
And accessible. Yeah.
And accessible, but powerful. Like it's blowing kids' brains out. We have 4 times more psychosis right now since legalization of weed. And I know that because I was, in the hospital going through all of this with my family members. And so what BC did, which was legalize, fentanyl.
Yeah.
2.5 grams of fentanyl is enough to kill 1,200 people, but that's how much you're legally allowed to have on your person.
Wow.
That does not make sense.
No.
But that's the fact. So you think about all the people who can legally have these drugs on them. Well, where the drugs going to come from? They're not going to drop out of the sky.
No.
It's illegal to traffic. It's illegal to manufacture, but yet they made that legal. So you got to stop and think, 50,000 people dead, legalizing drugs. There's corruption in here somewhere. Yeah. This is not right.
Yeah.
And that went across our country like wildfire.
Yeah.
And consequently, we have 50,000 people dead. And Ben was in the midst of that like 21 months ago. He was another statistic.
Wow.
At the time, I had no idea any of this was going on.
Yeah, I bet.
And I just put the pieces of it together after Ben died. I thought I was on my own going through this, dealing with a family genetic illness. And what it really was, yeah, we have mental health issues in our family. It unlocked bipolar for Ben. And then what most people don't realize is bipolar and schizophrenia come with something called anosognosia.
Yeah. So this was the thing that you brought up on the phone that really I need people to hear, because it's an important piece. I wanted to say that before you went any further.
Yeah. So anosognosia, as difficult as it is to say, is really just nothing other than the inability to see that you're sick.
Yeah.
So if you look at someone who's homeless, and you wonder why they don't get help, it's not because they don't want to. They don't want to refuse their medication or they don't want to get help. It's because they can't see they're sick.
Yeah.
How much persuading would you have to do to me to get me to go to the hospital if I didn't think I was sick? So 40% of bipolar patients and 80% of schizophrenic patients have anosognosia.
Wow.
That pretty much explains a lot of why we have our homeless people and our mental health issues. And what's criminal about that is we're letting them all live on streets in tents in the freezing Canadian cold.
Yeah, it's crazy. I know.
It's insane. That is absolutely insane. That's what I've been fighting against. It's like, work back from how a person is behaving to see what's going on in their brain.
Yeah. That's a hard concept, right? Like it's so, to you and I, that is the key to so many things. And yet that involves a lot of work.
Yeah.
And sometimes that work is.
Yeah. And it's so easy and convenient to put it in a little box and say,
Yeah.
oh, addiction is a choice. No, addiction is a brain illness that gets unlocked by the stuff that you just legalized.
Yeah.
And 1 in 6 kids, adolescents, will get bipolar, and 1 in 10 adults will get, cannabis use disorder. So 1 in 6 kids will get cannabis use disorder, and 1 in 10 adults. Like, you just statistically think about the brain power that we are wiping out from our country.
Wow.
And how that translates exponentially into benzos. We have like a mass benzo crisis going on in this country right now. People have no idea why they're not well, why they can't get out of bed, why they're angry. It is the angry drug, all of these benzos. And people are on them like candy.
Yeah.
And they're taking them for a smallest little thing, like I can't sleep. Well, you might not be able to sleep right now, but you're not even going to be able to recognize yourself in a couple of years after, Ativan.
Yeah.
So these are very, very dangerous things that are being prescribed to people without, a full understanding of what's going on. We're legalizing these very strong illicit drugs that are killing people.
Yeah.
And it's just like the opioid crisis with the Purdue Pharma, with oxys. It's the same thing with benzos. It's the same thing with fentanyl. It's the same thing. Sure, all the mothers are given fentanyl when their babies are born.
Yeah.
How do you think that's actually affecting the mothers and unborn babies?
Mm-hmm.
Like, we have no idea what we're doing to the brain.
No. Well, it's and it's interesting to me, and I didn't mean to pause you, but it's like in life when we know we do different, and yet I see all the research coming down around neuroscience and how we can shift and change the brain, but yet it's almost like we're not hearing it. Because again, it's outside the box.
Well, you have to stop and wonder why this is not the number one conversation of the election, of the newspapers. It's conveniently growing, and nothing is being done by it, and it's becoming the drug culture. It's so normalized, and it's until like what we had in this last 4 weeks. We had 2 14-year-olds die, and a 17-year-old, and another guy last night from a drug shootout. That's 4 people that I personally know of in the last 4 weeks.
In Newfoundland,
little tiny, 500,000 people here. That's because, not because all of these people are severe drug addicts.
Nope.
A lot of them, these young 14-year-old boys with no experience with drugs at all, and no tolerance to drugs, they're just taking, it looks like a Xanax pill. It looks like a Dilaudid, but it's actually injected and full of, or mixed up with a concoction of things like fentanyl, or this new drug now called, synthetic drug called protonidazine, or I don't even know how to pronounce it, but it's 3 times stronger than fentanyl. And that's with the case of these most recent deaths. So, like, people don't know what they're taking. No. They even put fentanyl in weed vapes now. And, you can vape weed anywhere without smelling it. So the whole thing is designed and has an architecture to it. You can't even, as a parent, help your child because of the privacy laws. They have it at every turn. I spent 7 years trying to help Ben to even get him to the hospital and get him diagnosed. Never happened. And so I fought the system like tooth and nail for him to survive. We have kids shelters that are what they call low barrier, meaning everybody's allowed to use drugs in them. We have housing called low barrier. That's the case for most provinces.
Wow.
Most provinces are low barrier, meaning that facility, at 16 years old, Ben was allowed to leave home, even though he had a safe home, go to a shelter, and it was very appealing to him. Oh, don't have to pay for food, don't have to pay for housing, I can smoke dope whenever I want to, go to school, no rules. Oh, that's child luring right there.
Wow.
And that's what's happening in Canada, providing kids with all these low barrier shelter spaces and luring them away from their families and calling it harm reduction and safe supply and stuff. That's criminal. 20 years from now, we're going to look back at that and go, wow, how did we ever let that happen?
Well, I think, I love your awareness and perspective and what you're teaching in this moment, because it's important to understand what is going on in the crisis at hand.
Mm-hmm.
For me, when I watch the world and, like you, see a big perspective, our mental health crisis from adults to children is the biggest crisis also that we are facing, because we've gone through this thing called COVID,
Mm-hmm.
where it put us alone.
Yeah.
And so many of us that even had it all together fell apart. And like you said, I mean, you can be intelligent and, right, there is a polarity that exists for so many. It's not wrong, it just is.
For sure.
But that crisis has resulted in so many not coming out the other side.
Absolutely.
And so different than ever before.
The architecture of this world is that everything is designed to bring us to self-awareness and self-love.
Yeah.
And so you don't even have a chance to walk that path and understand who you are and why you're here if you're getting drugged with fentanyl, because it's going to take your life like that.
Yeah.
So we're not even giving our children the opportunity or the open space to live into that is safe enough for them to discover who they are and why they're here. That is absolutely tragic.
Well, it is. And, it's funny. So I don't know, do you know epigenetics at all?
Yeah.
Yeah. So epigenetics is a place in my life that, when I started to understand it, has really helped my body shift out of so many factors, including the illness that I had.
Yeah.
But there's a prime piece that comes forth right now. From the age of 0 to 8, our children are pretty much mirror reflections of those around us. But from 8 to 25, that's when they build perspective, and boys build it later.
Mm-hmm.
So not only do we have a crisis, but we have children walking around, not even at the age of 25, with no perspective.
For sure.
And yet we're also trying to teach them or treat them like they do.
And
they don't.
Yes. And then you put marijuana on top of that, and then their perspectives go back.
Well, and so that's right. And they don't even. And so, I sit here and people know from the Nancy perspective that I used marijuana as a healing for my fibromyalgia and chronic pain. But I said to you on the phone, and I can say it out loud, there were moments that I'm glad you've empowered me, because I really took a step back and don't use it anymore, because there were moments that I witnessed of myself that I became fearful of something that could happen.
Yeah.
But again, it's awareness.
It is.
And having support around me that could see and help me through it. But again, we don't always have that support. We don't always listen.
Yeah.
Right?
And also, as for our young kids, their brains are developing up until 26, 27.
Yeah, that's right.
So
they don't have that.
At least give them the chance for the frontal cortex to develop and to be able to have some cause and effect in there and actually make some sensible decisions.
Yeah.
And, this is not about knocking weed.
No,
this is about why things have to be so strong and so severe that it's blowing people's brains out, that they don't even have mental capacity.
Yeah,
and then it's also about people who do have underlying mental illness getting triggered by these substances and never coming out of it, losing their lives, like my brother, like Ben, and many members of my family.
Yeah.
So that is a tragic, tragic situation. You have to ask yourself, is it worth it?
Well, yeah. And I think that's the biggest thing you've said for me that's really resonated very differently for me today, right? Is about underlying mental health really being pushed forward as a result. And that's an important piece for so many to be aware of and watch. So we get to the end of part 2, and I feel like we need a part 3, 4, and 5. So you have got somebody like you who has a child like yours in a moment that they don't know what to do. If you could give them a piece of advice to help them feel hope, what would that be?
Well, that's why we built Guardians of Recovery. It's guardiansofrecovery.foundation. On it is blogs and podcasts and a recovery magazine and all kinds of resources. The first thing I would say is go there. We have a Facebook group with 6,100 people on it called Guardians of Recovery. That's a nonstop, everyday conversation, and
Wow.
that's what you have to immerse yourself into is being with people who are struggling with this. We've helped over 300 parents since Ben died, so it's aligning yourself with people who are going through the exact same thing. Lived experiences, everything,
Yeah.
and you know, there's a lot of places that you're not going to be able to get help out there. And I think the most important work that I've done is empowered moms and dads to empower themselves and know that they're not alone and there's someone there by their side, and that no matter what, I got your back and I'm here for you. I'm always near.
Wow. Well, I want to end this with how I began this from the bottom of my heart. Like it's not a bow, it's a wow. Thank you for doing what you do. Thank you for the courage, the word courage from the moment you've walked in to stand here as authentic as you are with those red glasses and that beautiful pin that you wear so passionately, and for bringing the truth, the raw truth forward today.
Thank you,
I
Nancy.
think that is a gift that the world needs to embrace with openness, because change happens when we are passionate, and your passion blows my mind.
Yes, and thank you so much for taking this message to all the people who need to hear it. And you have a really special gift too. The way you see the world, the way you see people is, you know, exactly what we need in this world, because you see the possibility in
Yeah.
people.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. When two souls align on similar chapters, it is an incredible opportunity that I continue to be blessed and have no words for. So
Yeah.
from the bottom of my heart, thank you. To my listeners, I hope that this has resonated. I hope that you've learned something. I hope that you've taken a message out of this that makes you rise too. And we will share the handles. We will share everything that we need to reach out. And if you are struggling in the same, then I encourage you to reach out to a beautiful human who will listen. And that is definitely you.
Yeah.
So thank you.
Thank
I
you.
wish everyone a wonderful day. Bye for now.
Over and out.
Yeah. Over and out. Yeah.